Malcolm Turnbull cut a solitary figure on the way to his final COAG meeting for the year.
Well, good morning.
After a week he'd rather forget, he was hoping this day at least would deliver solid outcomes.
It's a time for action. Plenty of talking, of course, but above all, it has to be an occasion for concerted action.
Hot on his heels, the state and territory leaders with their usual grab bag of wildly different priorities.
I hope the Prime Minister has a few Christmas gifts for the states.
I think we have to do even more on infrastructure.
Of course, health and education are always going to be top of the list.
Meaningful steps to keep Australian women and their children safe from family violence.
One thing at least united them, the urgency of a national agreement on energy policy.
There has to be a national approach.
A clear national energy policy.
We need to have a national approach. It's a complete shambles, and a national energy plan is what we need.
Of course, it was South Australia's statewide blackout that roused the nation to the inadequacy of current energy policy settings, and its premier with most to lose from Malcolm Turnbull's decision to rule out an emissions intensity scheme.
The Prime Minister lost his job in relation to this issue back a few years ago. It would be a great irony if he were to lose his job for a second time, being on the opposite side of the debate.
You really think this debate could cost him his job?
Well, I think it certainly cost him his credibility already, but it certainly could cost him his job.
He presides over the least stable, the least secure electricity system, which is also the most expensive in Australia. So he's in no position to lecture us.
Hardly the foundations for a collegiate meeting.
Now, Australians expect us to show concerted leadership on the big issues that confront us. We have a very full agenda, and I'm looking forward to continuing our discussions, frankly and fearlessly, in the hours ahead.
When the leaders emerged, almost 6 hours later,
Welcome, everyone.
the Prime Minister was trying to stay upbeat.
These meetings are often described as talks, but they've had a lot of delivery to date.
He pointed to a deal on productivity reforms, which Victoria, Queensland and South Australia refused to sign, and a unanimous agreement to place greater restrictions on lever-action shotguns, like the much-debated Adler. But on a raft of other issues, there was clear disappointment from the states.
I think we all need to do more than talk about family violence leave. We need to deliver it in full.
What I've seen in the last week, both the Treasurer's meeting and today, is a frustrating lack of urgency on economic reform.
You talk about jobs and growth. Well, the best way to get people into work is actually have an infrastructure plan.
It wasn't just Labor leaders who left disappointed. Inside the meeting, New South Wales Premier Mike Baird called for more investment in infrastructure, but he was shut down by the Prime Minister, who said the Commonwealth was not an ATM. By far the biggest stoush, predictably, was energy, and it continued in the full glare of the media.
The Prime Minister himself, before he ascended to this role, said these words: "Mature evidence-based policy communicated to voters through sophisticated explanation rather than infantile slogans would be the mark of his leadership." And that's simply all we're asking for here.
Our policy is very clear. We do not support a carbon tax or an emissions trading scheme. That's our policy.
We're not proposing a carbon tax, and it's mischievous to suggest that we are. It's also even mischievous to suggest that we're proposing an emissions trading scheme, because that wasn't the proposition that was put here.
I believe there is too much attention to market schemes and the like, and that the situation on the East Coast would be a lot better with a few simple fundamental reforms rather than exotic and eloquent market solutions.
One of those market solutions, an EIS, is described by the government's own chief scientist, Alan Finkel, as having the lowest economic cost and the lowest impact on electricity prices. Dr Finkel presented those findings to the leaders today as part of his preliminary report on energy, but left Parliament without comment. Just a month after the government ratified its Paris climate commitments, Dr Finkel's report also warned there's currently no clear pathway to meet them. Is the chief scientist wrong when he says that?
Well, we have a set of policies at the federal level which have succeeded in meeting and beating substantially our Kyoto target. We'll meet and beat by a considerable margin our 2020 target.
and we are confident that we'll be able to do the same. We're on track to do the same for 2030.
I think Australia's climate policy is in nothing short of disarray.
Frontier Economics' Danny Price helped design an EIS for Malcolm Turnbull in 2009 when he was Liberal leader, and in 2016 says the government had been briefed on the benefits of this latest version before scrapping the option this week.
I'm aware that they've had information to show just how effective this scheme could be, and while reducing prices and improving security, it seems extraordinary to me that an option such as that is not even given any consideration at all.
Like many energy experts, he believes the decision will end up punishing the very people it's meant to protect.
The thing that really worries me is that in the policy vacuum, that the states will feel that they have to put some scheme in place, and that will actually drive up prices. And so the consumer's much worse off.
Worse still, he says the Prime Minister's #1 priority, energy security, is in danger as well.
There's no doubt that if the government does nothing, we are heading for an energy crisis. If you can improve security, reduce prices and reduce emissions, if you can't get a policy like that up, you should get out of the way and let somebody else who can get it up put it in place.
It's been a horror week for the Prime Minister after wrapping Parliament last week on a relative high with the passage of several key bills. Malcolm Turnbull has come crashing down to earth. He may talk of showing leadership on the big issues, but on climate and energy, and there are few bigger, he remains vulnerable to claims he's the one being led.
Today, it has been revealed that Malcolm Turnbull is more interested in appeasing the right-wing zealots of his own party, the people to whom his job is hostage, rather than taking real action on climate change.
And there's an even bigger battle looming: how to stave off a ratings agency downgrade while the economy is shrinking. With the mid-year budget update due in 10 days, Malcolm Turnbull's summer break can't come soon enough.